Hi there, welcome to Create with Copper. I'm Teresa from lilly-tree, and in this video I'm going to show you how to make this Moirai ring. Now, in case you're wondering, the Moirai were the Greek goddesses of fate. I've named this the Moirai ring as it developed into something different and better than I'd intended when starting, so it seems like fate was at play. To make this ring, the materials I'm using are 1mm diameter copper wire, 0.4mm diameter copper wire and a small bead. I'm using a 6mm garnet. And the tools I'm using are your round nose pliers, wire cutters and flat nose pliers. Nylon jaw pliers will also be useful. A ring mandrel, a jeweller's torch and tweezers, pickling solution and liver of sulphur. You'll also need your sanding and polishing tools. Now I'm starting with 25cm length of the 1mm diameter wire. You could use a longer length, which will give you more options when it comes to deciding what to do with the ends. And what I want to do is bend it in half. I'm just going to pop the middle into my round nose pliers and just bend it into a teardrop shape. I'm not really relying on the shape of the pliers here. They're just there to make sure it doesn't get too narrow at the end there and I end up with a point. And what I want is to be able to put the bead in the centre of this. It won't be right at the end. That's a little bit fat at the moment, so I'm just going to narrow it down a little more. You can adjust it a little bit more later, but it's worth just getting it there or thereabouts now. And then what I want to do is get the ends of the wires running parallel, and I want that to be a fairly gentle curve down, so just manipulate the wires back, get a nice gentle curve on there, just get those ends running parallel to each other. And we're ready to shape the wire around the mandrel. Now I'm going to leave that loop to start with. Just take this main bit of the wire round because I want the ends to then feed through that loop. And I know because of where the wires are going to go and the placement of the bead, I'm going to lose a couple of ring sizes. So I want this to be an O at the end. I'm going to start off moulding it round size Q. And once the ends of the wires are through, I can then bend down the loop to create the full ring shape. And that's going to get locked in place by the end wires, then hooking back upwards. I've then got the choice of what I want to do with those ends of the wires. And this is where you can experiment with different shapes. I'm going to start by taking those wires right over, make sure the ring is nice and solid. And those two wires are still sitting next to each other. And then this lower wire, just going to take round into quite a tight spiral, a curve. And the outside one will just be a bit wider than that. And you can just take your time to make sure those shapes are how you want them. The wires are sitting where you want them to be. Now I want those wires to be flat to the ring, so I'm just going to take my nylon jaw pliers, just squidge them back down again. And that will misshape the ring a little bit, so then pop it back on the ring mandrel just to round it back off again. Now I'm happy with those curves, and what I want to do is ball the ends of the wire and have them just hooking under the loop. So I need to chop off the ends of the wire about 5 to 7mm from where I want the end to actually be. That gives me enough copper for the ball to form. And then, because I need to take the torch to the ends of the wire, I'm just going to have to open those curves out again, gently. So I've got space for the torch flame on the ends. Now I'm going to be taking the torch right to the ends of the wires to ball them up. But what you find with copper is it's really good at conducting heat. So the heat will transfer straight round to the rest of the ring. The tweezers I'll hold it with also act as a heat sink, so that can mean that there's not enough heat at the end to ball the wire. It's a little bit trial and error. Now I've got the ring in my tweezers, and I'm going to be holding the torch so the flame is going straight upwards. You can do it at the side, I just find upwards is a little easier. So switch on the flame. And then what I'm wanting to do is hold the flame to the wire so the tip of the wire is right at the tip of that inner cone of the flame. That's the hottest part of the torch. And if we've got the setup right, we just need to keep heating it until it balls up. Now I've been going for a minute or so, nothing's happened, so I think we've just got the setup wrong. Too much heat is escaping to the rest of the ring and the tweezers. So I'm just going to adjust those wires and the position of my tweezers. And then we'll have another go. I can see that's melting pretty much straight away, and oh, it's just leaped up. I want the ball slightly larger than that, so I'll keep heating it. Now the thing to remember with this is that you're in charge of the flame, it's not in charge of you. If things seem to be happening a little bit quickly, you can move the flame away from the wire and then take it back when you're ready. Obviously make sure you're working away from anything that might catch fire. Keep your hair tied back, anything flammable out of the way. Just want that one to ball up ever so slightly more. Once that's done, I'll move over to the second wire. Now if it's glowing a little bit too much, you might not be able to see how big it is. You can take the flame away, just check it, and then go back in again. And I think they're about where I want them. And once you're done, quench the piece. Don't handle it until you've quenched it in some water. And you'll notice the piece is now blackened. That's perfectly normal. But what I need to do now is pop it in some pickling solution. I just use pickling, it works quite well. And that'll clean it up nicely. Now the piece has been in the pickle and it's nice and clean, but you will notice it's got a matte finish on it. Don't worry about that. Once you polish it up, it'll come up nice and shiny again. But the action of polishing also work hardens the wire. So before we polish it back up again, I want to pop those two ends of the wire in the right place. So the first thing I want to do is turn those ball ends upwards so they can hook around the loop we first made. So I'm just going to grab hold of one of them in my flat nose pliers and turn it upwards. I'll do the same with the second one. And then we can pop those wires back where they need to be. Because you've heated the piece, you'll also notice that the wire is now extremely soft, which makes it really easy to work with, but you do have to be a bit gentler with it. So just carefully bend those wires back into shape and make sure the curve is how you want it to be. The wires are sitting where you want them, and the shape is how you want it to be when it's finished. Then you can pop it back on the ring mandrel just to make sure everything's rounded, it's the right shape. Got those wires are where you want them to be, and make any last little adjustments to the shape. And then that's ready to polish up. So the frame's now polished up and we're ready to start weaving into that teardrop shape. Now this weave is slightly different from the norm. Usually you would anchor one end of the wire onto the frame and then weave with the other end of the wire. In this particular weave I'm going to be weaving both ends at the same time, mainly because I didn't want an end in the point of that teardrop, which would be between your two fingers. So I'm going to take about 80 centimetres of the 0.4mm wire and just pop it through the middle of the ring up to the centre of the 0.4mm wire. So I've got equal lengths either end, and then taking one side, I'm just going to wrap that 0.4mm wire around the frame, one wire of the frame, twice. Then as it comes up and over the third time, it's going to go over to the other side of the frame, but we'll just pop that through out of the way, but we won't tighten that up just yet because I'll put the first wraps on the other side of the wire first. So taking that side, you just need to wrap around the other frame wire twice and just try and make sure to get it down so the two wraps, both sides, are actually sitting parallel to each other. They all line up. Then I can take that first side and just pull it downwards so it crosses over to the bottom. Take the bottom wire through and cross that over so it's coming up to the top of the frame. And just make sure that's all sitting neatly. And those wraps are quite tightly together. You're then ready to wrap twice around each side again and then cross them over and keep weaving in that manner until you get up to the first of those ball ends of the wire. Okay, so I'm just about up to the first of those wire ends, and you'll find that the ring has misshapen a little bit with your weaving, so I'm just going to pop it back on the mandrel and make sure the shape is back to round. And then I'm just going to take that top wire, there's just a little bit of space before the ball, so I'm just going to weave that through one more time. And then the next time I want to hook it around that ball. But I want to continue the weave as it is, so my wire then needs to go under the outside frame. And make sure that loop of wire is still hooked around the ball. Get the 0.4 wire as tight to the others as possible. There probably will be a little bit of a gap, but don't worry too much about that. Then I'm going to take that round again, and that wire will be ready to cross back over to the other side. Now you might find on the other side you just need a few more wraps to get it to the same point and keep those crossovers parallel. But all you need to do is wrap round in the same manner as before, but instead of 2 wraps it might be 3 or 4. And then once you've got those wraps in, you can just cross the 2 wires over, the same as before, and then continue that weave until you're around about where you want to add the bead. The only thing you now need to bear in mind is you've got an outermost wire that you're not wrapping around. So you're still going around the teardrop, and you need to bring the wires up through between that teardrop and the outermost wire. Now I've continued the weave and I'm about ready at the point to add the bead. But if you place the bead in, you can see that the 2 wrapping wires need to go round the frame a few more times to get them to the point where they're in the centre of that bead and can thread through the bead. So I'm just going to put a few more wraps on to take them to the right point. So the wires are now at about the right point and I'm ready to add the bead. Both of the weaving wires are going to go through the centre of the bead in opposite directions. So I'll start off by threading one side on, and don't forget you're continuing basically where the weave will be, so that wire needs to also go down through the frame. I'll just leave a little bit of space on that and then thread the other end through. Not very straight, so you might just need to straighten it out a little bit just to get it through the bead and then down through the frame. Make sure there aren't any kinks in the wire as they go through, and then you can pull both ends tight to get that bead sitting in the right place. Then wrap each side again to get to the edge of the bead and continue with the wrap as before, weaving in that wire end as previously. Now I've taken the weave as far as I could go till there was no more space to cross the wires over, and then the 2 weaving wires I just wrapped around the frame wire as far as they could go, and then I just need to cut off the ends and make sure they're tucked in nicely so they're not poking through and scratching the skin. Now this side I managed to loop the wire around a bit so it's in a decent shape. Then I can just chop off part way around that curve, and then taking my flat nose pliers just push that curve back down in so it's nice and neat. And that finishes the ring. You can leave it as bare copper or patina it. I hope you enjoyed that and are inspired to make your own Moirai ring. and let the fates decide what yours will be like. If you enjoyed this video, please press the like button below, subscribe to my channel and head over to my blog for more hints, tips and projects. See you soon.